Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Shauna. Let's get into this. So, I've been instructed to get back to the original topic. We are to continue phasing through the segment. Through this particular series, I had posed a challenge to atheists to learn more about God, whether it be through religion or going out into nature. And then I had also challenged people to learn more about a religion other than their own. So been doing a little bit of research, and this is actually like old knowledge that came back up, and I thought it was important to share. And actually it just led me to understand a little bit more about the emotions of an atheist, someone who doesn't believe in God, or someone who would believe that they themselves are God, or someone who just simply doesn't understand because many religious sacred texts, as well as people who are associated with the religious groups, do a lot of contradictory things that really don't make sense. And if you're logical and you really sit back and remove your faith, of course you will have more questions, right? Your faith and having things acted out and seeing things play out and manifest is what allows you to believe, especially if you have had a relationship early on with the Creator, or even if you didn't have a relationship and you grew up in a religious or a traditional environment, right? So I want to just go over some things. A lot of this stuff we discussed already. I just want to kind of like build, the bridge and kind of make the dots connect a little bit more. So there are tons of religions, right? Over 4,000, with the main 5 being Christian, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, and Buddhism, right? Then there's like 7 more, and then they branch out to like 12 more, but let's just stick to these 5, right? Let's look at some of the similarities within these different religions, right? You have Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, and Buddhism. All believe in Jesus Christ, right? These are obviously different beliefs, right? In many ways, but if you really do your research and start reading, you'll see a lot of similarities, especially with the stories that are in the books, right? In the Quran and in the Bible, the stories are the same, right? You have the story of Cain and Abel, you have the story of the Immaculate Conception, Mary and Jesus, right? You have a lot of similarities across the board. Now, there's a lot of differences when it comes to the concept of Jesus, who he was, what he means to the world, who he is to the Creator, and exactly, what it was that he did, right? Now, if you just look at this from surface level, you can see a lot of, like I said, similarities and differences, right? So if you look at Christianity, okay, obviously we'll skip that one. He's important to Christianity as a whole, right? But then when you go over to Judaism, same book, by the way, right? The Torah is the book that is used by the Jews. It's the first 5 books in the Bible, right? Now, in Judaism, Jesus is said to not have been resurrected, and he is actually not even that important, because to honor him would be practicing idolatry, which is forbidden in Judaism, right? The Messiah is actually described as someone who would be a descendant of the Jewish King David. He would be a righteous king who would rebuild in Jerusalem, and he would reunite people of all colors, races, and creeds, right? Now, remember, same book. Now, when you go over to Hinduism and Judaism, he is seen as an archery, right? Where he's said to be a spiritual leader in both practices. Now, Hinduism and Judaism are both philosophies, right? Now, in Buddhism, Jesus Christ is seen as a consciousness, right? As a level of consciousness, right? Christ consciousness, while he's seen as a teacher, right? In Hinduism, and he's seen as a god, right? One of the many gods. So, with that being said, I wanted to start looking at a lot of the texts. Now, remember, we said a lot of the stories were the same, but then, as you start to do more research, you start finding out that these same stories are coming from, they have the same exact storyline as stories coming from Kemetic history. Now, why this is important is because Kemetic civilization predates Christ era, right? It's the before Christ era. As far back as 2000, right? You have these stories, and then you have other cultures that ended up picking up the same exact storyline with Cain killing Abel, same storyline as Set killing Osiris, right? Then you have the Immaculate Conception story, right? This is the story of Osir, who had made Haru, right? And then you have Isis and Neff, and this is where Horus comes from, right? These are both storylines where virgins were said to become impregnated and birth, messiahs or kings, if you will, right? Now, I had so many different questions because, we had small conversations, but never really went in full, bringing multiple different perspectives. And when I mean perspectives, I mean religions and cultures, right? And thought processes, because we can't leave out the atheists, right? This is still a concept. It's still a construct, right? We still have to consider that thought frame as well. Now, even when you look at Jesus and Lazarus, with these resurrection stories, they are going back to, the Egyptian times. Like I said, this is with the Egyptian, with Haru, where he's basically the first person to be said had to be resurrected, where he was believed to be born on Christmas. And this is where the Holy Trinity come from, because he was said to be born in the stable of August, right? So when you start paying attention to all of this information, it makes you wonder, right? The world was, and this is just me and my thought process, right? It's me just thinking. If the world was destroyed by a flood and fire, right? And all of these stories were believed or proven to have been written before the Christ era, because remember, Egypt and all of that is in the Old Testament, right? is it possible that the Bible and everything like after Kemetic time, is it possible that these books is just mere folklore, and that explains why the books are given in personal account as opposed to, just being a book, because this was the only way that we could capture history, because everything had been destroyed, right? Because remember, Egypt was what? Right? And we're not doing like Bible study class or anything like that, because remember, we're just going over surface level things. It's just something to bring to the forefront. And as someone who is a believer, who has studied many different religions and customs, and I can see why, even as far as Islam, Jesus is considered, right? His name is actually Esau in the Bible. The Immaculate Conception is, mentioned. Like I said, the Cain and Abel story, but there's no story or belief in the Holy Trinity or the resurrection in Islam either, right? Just like in Judaism. Whereas in Hinduism, they believe that he died and came back, right? Instead, there's a belief in Islam that on the day of Yom al-Qiyamah, that we all arise, right? This is the day of resurrection, where we all will arise on the day of judgment to meet our Maker, right? Now, for anyone who, who doesn't believe, I can see how this can get tricky, because I would see why you have a hard time, trying to understand like how our deaths are related if our souls have two completely different journeys. And, like, why would we have to do this together along with everyone else? Like, I can understand why that would be confusing, right? But not everything is meant to be understood. So I think once we learn that, I think it'll be easier to start opening our minds up to understand that there is something greater than ourselves. I always like to use the example of, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the oceans, look at the trees, and not the ones we plant, like the really, really, really big ones, right? Look at nature. There's no way we as humans could have created that. Even if our ancestors were gods, right? There's still something greater than what we know and what we see. And that's the whole point. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of, toy with the idea of, having these stories doesn't take away from anyone's religion, but it does open up the conversation to having another layer and a better understanding of maybe why, certain religions may not sit well with someone's spirit. And it's possibly because the origin of these stories have been, I wouldn't say distorted, but I would say retold. So there's a lot of missing pieces, and that would make sense for someone who is directly connected, right, to these people. You would be able to feel that something is missing because it's not making sense, right? So I just wanted to add that layer for people who, are not understanding how someone could not believe in God, right? Some people are really logical and they don't have that thing where they could believe. Like, some people have to see things to believe them, right? And that's okay. God loves to prove himself. God loves to show that he is God. So be patient with people who, you feel you have to pray for, who you feel, you're having a hard time with, who are having a hard time with themselves, who may be battling things that no one knows about. And you can see clearly that, they need help, just try not to judge. Try to look at them and see what it is that you have going on that you may be mirroring, that can make you even identify what's going on with them, whether you are gifted or not. And really just try to keep your ears and your eyes open and your spirit and your mind open, and just stay on your hands and knees. We're going to slip up. We're going to make mistakes. We're human. It's okay. The thing is to ask for forgiveness and really just try to figure out a better way to become better. That's what this is about every day. Nothing was built overnight. Everything is a process. So I just wanted to make sure we had this conversation because I want to go into some books, over some books other than the Bible and the Quran that have these stories that come from different schools of thoughts and different time periods and different, concepts. But I do want to end with this question. And I think I said this a few times, but I want to say it again. How is Jesus, or why is Jesus such a prominent figure in all of these religions, right? Especially in Christianity, if he was a Jew who spoke Aramaic, which is really close to Arabic, right? And why is Judaism and Christianity and Catholicism, using the Bible if they're all so different, but they all still follow the same concept as far as laws and beliefs about the overall concept of how Jesus actually came. And in Judaism, the Messiah is said to be born of of a human. Like he's gonna be he's gonna come in as normal. It's not gonna be like the Immaculate Conception thing, right? As far as Judaism goes. So there's so many different things that I understand why someone would be confused and why none of this makes sense. Especially if this is something that you're just being introduced to, or if it's something you've been sitting with forever and you have all these questions and nothing's making sense. So I get it on either end. But again, I challenge you to go out into nature. Really open your heart up and meet people, talk to people, learn people. Don't look for anything in return, especially not anything tangible. Try to go out and, really get to know yourself in nature. Be one with your thoughts. Sit still, sit in silence for a minute. And try to let your mind run clear and free. Try not to think. Try to block out the thoughts. Open up your heart to what it is that you feel the Creator, can provide you with or help you with. And fester in that for a minute. So the Black Madonna is also, the Black Madonna and the child is also viewed as the new, Mary and Jesus. So we have all these different stories that have the same exact storyline with just different names, different time periods. And I think that's more than coincidental. So I'm going to end it there. I hope y'all had a good weekend. I hope y'all going to eat something good. I hope all is well. I hope y'all are drinking some water, eating some fruit and some vegetables, and sipping y'all tea because it's free. And y'all, love y'all. Peace.